Vladimir Putin has accused Ukraine of carrying out a terrorist attack in the occupied Luhansk region and ordered the army to prepare retaliation. The Russian president says Ukrainian drones hit a college dormitory in Starobilsk. The city's in the eastern Luhansk region, most of which has been occupied by Russia since 2014. Russia says at least 6 people were killed and another 15 are missing. President Putin claims Ukrainian forces deliberately targeted a student dormitory. Ukraine denies targeting civilians and says it attacked a military headquarters in a town occupied by Russia. But the Russian leader is insisting his forces do not have a base in the area.
I would like to emphasize this is important. There are no military facilities, special services facilities, or related facilities near the accommodation. So, there is no reason to suggest that the missiles hit the building as a result of our air defense or electronic warfare systems.
Let's get more from our correspondent Juri Rescheto, who joins us from the Latvian capital, Riga, where he has been reporting on Russia since DW was banned from Moscow. Welcome, Juri. What sort of Russian retaliation can Ukraine expect?
Well, first of all, Phil, Russians are accusing Ukrainian forces of carrying out the strike, and they are backing that up with detailed claims. But Ukrainians deny everything. According to their account, Russian military personnel were attacked. Putin's message that he's instructed the military to respond, and what Ukraine could expect, I think when Moscow talks about retaliation, it usually means a spike in attacks, more missiles, more drones hitting harder and more frequently. There is also speculation Russia could again use its Oreshnik medium-range ballistic missile. The last time, on the night of January 9, it was part of a large-scale attack involving over 200 drones, ballistic missiles and cruise missiles across Ukraine. A similar wave of strikes could follow now.
Right, so we have an apparently deadly Ukrainian attack on Russian-controlled territory. How does news like this affect Russia's wartime mood and indeed the president's popularity?
Well, look, beyond the military angle, there is a strong propaganda push right now, clearly in favor of Putin. Russian Foreign Ministry has already labeled the incident a terrorist attack or act. Moscow has also called for a UN Security Council meeting, clearly trying to frame the narrative internationally as well as domestically. And that domestic angle is key. Putin's approval is under pressure. A recent poll shows 14% of Russians now say they view his performance negatively, which is the highest level in the past year. A year ago, that number was about half. So the main reason growing of war fatigue, especially as Ukrainian drones hit targets deep inside Russia, far from the front lines, bring the conflict closer to everyday life.
What are we to make of these media reports that suggest that the president intends to end this war by the end of the year? How likely is that?
Well, Putin needs this war to be finished somehow. First of all, because of economic impact is becoming harder to ignore. Ukrainian drone strikes, as I said, are hitting oil refineries, crucial for funding the war. By mid-May, according to media reports, operations at almost all major refineries in central Russia had been disrupted. That's a significant blow to a sector producing about a quarter of the country's fuel. Inside Russia's leadership, there are also signs of tension. Reports suggest that some senior officials believe the war has effectively stalled with no clear path forward. There is a talk of a growing sense of unease among parts of the elite. Still, publicly, Putin is sticking to his position. He wants the war to end only on terms he considers a victory, which means full control over Donbass and a broader deal with Europe that would effectively accept Russia's territorial gains. At this stage, that looks highly unlikely. So overall, we are seeing a familial dynamic, military escalation, an aggressive information campaign, and increasing pressure at home.
Thanks, Juri. Juri Rescheto.
And let's get more. We are joined now by DW Russia analyst Konstantin Eggert. So, Konstantin, Putin is saying that the Russian Defense Ministry is now preparing a response. What could be expected?
Well, Sarah, the response is exactly what Russia's been doing for 4+ years. It's going to be more shelling of Ukrainian civilian targets. And this has been going on for a long time. Maybe it's going to be even more severe than generally, but I think this is exactly what it's going to do. And I think that this incident in Starobilsk, which we don't know all the details about, is used as a convenient pretext to whip up anti-Ukrainian feelings in Russia, where there is a very clear war fatigue now among the population. So this is an attempt to inject more anger at Ukraine and basically also show that Russian shelling of Ukrainian cities is justified.
I'd like to pick up on something that you just mentioned there. The fact that Putin has been under pressure following a number of attacks on Russian territory lately. Can you tell us a bit more about his position politically at the moment?
Well, look, this is not a democracy. He's not under pressure from independent parliament, from independent media, from NGOs or whatever. But pressure rather in such regimes as Russian, which is a personal dictatorship, is spread across the ruling bureaucracy, which sees the leader as clueless about defending Russian assets, and among the population, which says, well, you know, the Tsar is not that strong. So I think it's not a pressure in a, well, you know, classic sort of democratic society in Germany or in Poland or Lithuania, where I am now, but it is definitely an issue of prestige and power for Putin, and he's trying now to wriggle himself out of this growing feeling among the populace, and I'm sure among the elite, that, well, basically he's losing the war.
Konstantin, we don't know much, but what do we know at this point about what actually happened in Starobilsk?
Not much. It seems there was a missile hit. As the Ukrainians are saying, it is they actually targeted some kind of military site or security site. Generally, there is an interesting element here. Ukrainians try to spare Ukrainian cities which are occupied by Russia. So to me, someone who saw the rise of Vladimir Putin since 1999 and someone who knows his penchant for provocation, I would like to say we still have to look at real consequences and real circumstances of what happened in Starobilsk, and let me leave it here.
Interesting. I mean, I think we can read between the lines what you might be insinuating there, Konstantin. But of course, we would have to know the facts to really know more. If you broaden this out right now and you know, look at the situation strategically, you know, more than 4 years now into the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, how significant is this location in particular, occupied Luhansk, which Russia annexed in 2022 and claims to have full control over in the current phase of this conflict?
Well, I think there is an element of significance, probably not as huge as Putin is trying to make it, because what essentially he says, why it's important, is this is now Russian land. This is something that we are defending now. We are defending our own citizens now, although it is an occupied Ukrainian territory. In this respect, it is, I would say, a step up in his rhetoric against Ukraine. Now, what they're going to say next, I'm absolutely certain about it, is that it was actually NATO that directed Ukrainians to hit the town of Starobilsk, because Putin is saying every day, we're not fighting Ukraine. Ukraine is unimportant. We're fighting NATO. We're fighting the West. So essentially, I think to me personally, it looks as he and his team, his entourage, are looking for ways to, jack up the emotions in Russia, to whip up more patriotism at a time when essentially it's on the wane. So to me, it's an indirect sign that psychologically the situation inside the regime and around the regime in the society is not very good for Putin.
There have been some reports, Konstantin, suggesting that Putin might want to wind down the war this year. First of all, what do you make of those reports, and how might this incident fit into that narrative?
Look, of course he wants to end the war, declare victory, grab everything he wants to grab, impose on Europe some kind of new quote-unquote security architecture, which will mean that Russia will be an indispensable decider in all things concerning European security. Of course, this type of end to the war he wants. I don't think he's going to get it. And as long as he's not getting it, this war will continue. This war will go on as long as Putin is either in the Kremlin or on this earth. And this is something that I'm completely certain.
Konstantin Eggert, thank you so much.
Thank you.